One of the things that I love most about my show is that when I travel the world, a lot of people tell me that we inspire them to want to bake. We inspire them to, want to go to culinary school.
Picture a 9-foot cake shaped like a grand piano, cracking down the middle on live television, seconds before a room full of guests was supposed to see it. That single moment could have ended a man's career. Instead, it helped build an empire. This is the story of how a small Italian bakery on a single street corner in Hoboken, New Jersey turned into one of the biggest names in reality television, and how that same empire slowly came apart at the seams. This is the rise and fall of Cake Boss. Long before cameras ever showed up, there was just a bakery. Carlo's Bake Shop opened its doors in Hoboken in 1910, a modest storefront selling classic Italian pastries to a working-class neighborhood. Decades later, it was run by a man named Buddy Valastro Sr., a strict, hard-working baker who believed that quality and family came before everything else. His son, Buddy Valastro Jr., was born in 1977, the youngest boy in a household of 5 children. From the time he could walk, Buddy was underfoot in that bakery, watching his father knead dough, pipe frosting, and treat every cake like it mattered more than anything else in the world. Nobody expects to lose a parent as a teenager, but that is exactly what happened to Buddy. When he was 17, his father was diagnosed with lung cancer, and within a short time, he passed away. Overnight, a teenager who should have been worrying about school and friends was suddenly the man responsible for keeping a family bakery alive. There was no gradual handoff, no years of mentorship to lean on. Buddy had to grow up in a matter of weeks, stepping behind the counter and into the kitchen as the person everyone now looked to for answers. His mother, Mary, became his anchor during that period, helping hold the family and the business together while her son learned, sometimes through trial and error, how to run a company he had inherited far too soon. What could have easily become a story of struggle turned into a story of ambition. Buddy didn't just keep the bakery running. He pushed it further than his father ever had. He experimented with elaborate wedding cakes, sculpted sugar art, and increasingly ambitious custom designs that turned heads well beyond Hoboken. Word of mouth started to spread. People began driving in from other towns just to see what outrageous, oversized creation Carlo's Bake Shop had made that week. Still, 4 years, it remained just that, a well-loved local bakery with a big reputation in a small radius. Nobody could have predicted that a television camera would change everything. In 2009, a producer took notice of the chaos, talent, and family drama happening inside that Hoboken kitchen, and pitched a docuseries to TLC. The result was Cake Boss, a show that followed Buddy and his team as they built jaw-dropping cakes under tight deadlines, all while navigating the very real tensions of running a business with your siblings and in-laws. It was messy, loud, occasionally chaotic, and completely unlike the polished cooking competitions audiences were used to. Viewers didn't tune in just for the cakes. They tuned in for Buddy himself, a big personality with a quick temper, a bigger heart, and an obvious, unshakable loyalty to his family. The show became an almost immediate hit. Ratings climbed fast, and within a couple of seasons, Cake Boss had turned into appointment television for millions of viewers. Part of the appeal was watching real family dynamics play out on camera. Buddy's 4 older sisters and their husbands worked at the bakery alongside him, and their bickering, teasing, and occasional blow-ups felt genuine in a way scripted television never could. Audiences fell in love with the extended Valastro family as much as they fell in love with the cakes, and the cakes themselves became something close to a spectacle. Over the years, Buddy and his team built cakes shaped like life-sized motorcycles, entire dollhouses, massive sports stadiums, and towering, gravity-defying sculptures that seemed impossible to eat, let alone build. Some of these creations became famous in their own right, replayed constantly in clip compilations and best-of montages. A collapsing showpiece cake, an outrageously detailed bathroom-themed dessert, a life-sized wedding cake built for a pair of pets, an unsettling and highly realistic zombie cake for Halloween. These moments turned Cake Boss into more than a show about baking. It became a show about spectacle, family, and just how far one man was willing to push the boundaries of sugar and fondant. Buddy leaned into his newfound fame rather than shy away from it. He appeared on talk shows, graced magazine covers, and became one of the most recognizable faces in food television. TLC capitalized on the momentum by spinning the franchise out into multiple related shows, including a baking competition series designed to find the next great cake artist, along with additional programs that expanded the Cake Boss universe even further. For a while, it felt like Buddy Valastro's name was everywhere, printed on cookbooks, plastered across merchandise, and mentioned constantly in entertainment news. Success on that scale rarely comes without a cost, and for Cake Boss, that cost slowly started to show. As the franchise expanded into spin-off after spin-off, some longtime viewers began to feel like the magic that made the original show special was being diluted. What once felt like an intimate look into a real family business started to feel like a manufactured content machine, churning out programming just because the demand was there. Familiarity, as it often does, started giving way to fatigue. Then came the controversies, and they arrived one after another. In 2013, reports surfaced alleging that some employees at Carlo's bakery were being paid well below the legally required minimum wage. The claims suggested that certain workers were earning far less per hour than New Jersey law required at the time, along with accusations that the workplace atmosphere under Buddy's management could be harsh and intimidating. Buddy denied any wrongdoing and pushed back against these characterizations publicly. Regardless of who was right, the story spread quickly, and by the following year, a settlement had reportedly been reached with labor authorities, requiring back pay and updated workplace policies. For a show built around a wholesome, hard-working, family-first image, allegations like these struck directly at the brand's foundation. Not long after, in 2014, Buddy found himself facing a very public legal issue of a different kind, after being arrested and charged with driving under the influence in New York. The story dominated entertainment headlines for days, and for a personality whose entire public identity had been built around being a devoted family man, the arrest chipped away at that carefully built image. It wasn't a scandal that ended his career, but it added another crack to a reputation that had, until that point, felt almost untouchable. Perhaps the most widely criticized moment in the show's later years involved a segment featuring transgender model and television personality Carmen Carrere. An episode built around a gender reveal-themed prank drew significant backlash, with many viewers and advocacy voices describing the segment as insensitive and disrespectful toward transgender individuals. What might have been intended as light-hearted television instead sparked real anger, and the criticism followed the show for a long time afterward. For a program that relied heavily on being seen as fun, harmless, and family-friendly, this kind of backlash was difficult to shake off. A separate and more serious allegation emerged around 2015, when a former employee came forward with claims of inappropriate workplace conduct, describing an environment that they said included demeaning comments and behavior that made the workplace uncomfortable. As with the wage allegations from a couple of years earlier, this added another layer of controversy hanging over the show and its central figure, further complicating the wholesome brand that had once defined Cake Boss. While all of this was happening in the background, the show's ratings were already trending downward. Starting around 2015, viewership numbers began a steady decline that never really recovered. Part of this had nothing to do with scandal at all. The reality television landscape was shifting rapidly. Streaming platforms were changing how people consumed content, and a wave of newer competition and lifestyle shows offered fresher formats that felt more current. Cake Boss, which had once felt groundbreaking, started to feel like a relic of an earlier era of cable television. Combine that shift with the accumulated weight of negative headlines, and the show's slow fade became difficult to reverse. By 2017, after nearly a decade on the air, TLC brought Cake Boss to a close. It wasn't a dramatic, headline-grabbing cancellation. It was more of a quiet ending, the kind that happens when a show has simply run its course. For a series that had once been a cultural phenomenon, the ending felt almost anticlimactic, a far cry from the excitement that had surrounded its debut years earlier. Endings, though, are rarely the end of the whole story. Buddy Valastro didn't disappear from public life once Cake Boss wrapped. If anything, he pivoted, expanding his business interests well beyond the original Hoboken storefront. Additional bakery locations opened in other states, and Buddy branched out into the restaurant world, launching an Italian eatery in Las Vegas that let him showcase dishes beyond just cakes and pastries. He continued releasing cookbooks, launched food products, and kept building a business empire that extended well past the original bakery that made him famous. Television wasn't done with him either. Buddy went on to star in new programs, including a series where he and a rotating team of bakers helped everyday home bakers pull off ambitious cake projects of their own. He also found himself in a recurring, good-natured rivalry on a competition show that pitted him against fellow celebrity pastry chef Duff Goldman, a fixture of food television in his own right thanks to years spent building his own cake business on the opposite coast. Off camera, the two chefs reportedly built a genuine friendship, trading good-natured jabs while also supporting one another through difficult moments in their personal lives. Life after Cake Boss wasn't without its own hardships. In 2020, Buddy suffered a serious injury when his hand was caught in equipment at a home bowling alley, an accident significant enough to require multiple emergency surgeries. Recovery took time, patience, and no small amount of family support, echoing the same themes of resilience that had defined so much of his story from the very beginning. Years later, he would describe regaining most, though not quite all, of the strength and function in that hand. Meanwhile, the extended cast that had made Cake Boss so watchable continued on with their own lives, largely staying rooted in the same bakery business that had given them their start. Buddy's sisters and their husbands remained involved in various parts of the company, each carving out their own role, whether behind the counter, in the kitchen, or handling the countless logistics that come with running a business that had, for a decade, been broadcast into homes across the country. Not every storyline had a happy ending. One family member connected to the show became the subject of a serious criminal case unrelated to the bakery itself, a reminder that reality television only ever shows a curated slice of anyone's real life. Looking back, the story of Cake Boss is really two stories laid on top of each other. On one level, it's the story of an underdog, a teenager who lost his father far too young and somehow turned grief into determination, building an already respected neighborhood bakery into a nationally recognized brand. On another level, it's a cautionary tale about what fame does to something that started out small and personal. The very things that made Cake Boss so appealing in its early years, the rawness, the family chaos, the feeling that you were watching something real, became harder to maintain once the cameras multiplied, the spin-offs piled up, and the pressures of running a public-facing empire collided with the messiness of real human mistakes. There's also something worth noting about how quickly public trust can shift once cracks start to show. None of the individual controversies alone destroyed Cake Boss. Businesses survive labor disputes. Celebrities survive DUI arrests. Shows survive a single tone-deaf episode. But when several of these moments stack up over just a couple of years, they compound. Each new headline chipped away a little more at an image that had been built almost entirely on trust, warmth, and the idea of a hard-working, loving family just trying to run their bakery the right way. Once that image started to crack, no amount of elaborate cake sculptures could fully patch it back together. At the same time, it would be unfair to reduce Buddy Valastro's story down to just the scandals. The man built something out of genuine tragedy. He turned a teenage loss into a decades-long career, kept a family business alive and thriving, employed countless people, trained a new generation of cake artists, and brought a level of visibility to the craft of cake decorating that simply hadn't existed on that scale before. Whatever mistakes were made along the way, and there were real ones, the underlying achievement of building Carlo's bakery into a nationally known brand remains difficult to dismiss. So where does that leave Cake Boss today? The original series is ended, but its influence hasn't fully disappeared. Reruns still circulate. Clips of the show's most outrageous cakes still get shared and rediscovered by new audiences online, and Buddy himself remains an active figure in food television, still building, still competing, and still running the same Hoboken bakery that started this entire journey more than a century ago. The show may have had its rise and its fall, but the bakery, and the family behind it, is still standing. In the end, the story of Cake Boss isn't really about cakes at all. It's about what happens when a family business gets thrust into the spotlight, how quickly admiration can turn into scrutiny, and how difficult it is to keep something feeling authentic once millions of people are watching. It's a story about resilience in the face of real personal loss, about the messy reality behind a polished television image, and about how fame can build something up just as fast as it can start to tear it down. Whether you remember Cake Boss for its jaw-dropping cake designs, its chaotic family moments, or the controversies that eventually caught up with it, one thing is clear. For nearly a decade, this small bakery from Hoboken managed to capture the attention of the entire country, and that's not something easily forgotten. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the rise and fall of one of reality television's most iconic shows, let us know your favorite Cake Boss moment in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this one.